Well, a pleasant good afternoon, Zuiderdam. How are we doing? All right, we've got a full house this evening. So before our amazing Dr. William Beeman comes on and commence with our presentation, I just have a few things to note and to reiterate what the captain would have mentioned at his noon announcement. So of course, due to the weather, we will be arriving at 8 a.m. Everyone, all right? So we were originally scheduled to arrive at 7 o'clock with an all-aboard time of 12:30 to leave the port at 1 o'clock. So we'll be arriving an hour later, all right? So 8 a.m. is the arrival time or the approximate arrival time. Departure time has then been pushed to 2 o'clock. So make sure that you're back on board by 1:30. So that is the slight update what's happening. So it's not really a time change. We're just pushing back an hour and leaving an hour later. Everyone got that? All right, another thing to note as well with this particular presentation as well, we do know it's a very popular presentation, so we will have this on your stateroom televisions available for you all later tonight and then also for tomorrow as well. So if you manage not to catch the presentation now or if you want to rewatch the presentation, feel free to check your televisions later tonight or tomorrow morning. We're going to have it upload on your stateroom televisions as well. And we also know this is a very popular presentation, like I said, but we do ask that for any guests, please do not sit in the stairwells or the stairway because it is a safety hazard, all right? Just in case we do have an emergency, we do need the staircases not occupied and make sure that it's clear so that in event that something happens, we're able to just head on out. But nothing's going to happen, folks. We just need to take our safety precautionary measures, all right? Sounds good? All right, so without further ado, it's 1 o'clock. Let's give a round of applause for Dr. William Beeman.
Thank you so much for coming out during lunchtime. I really do appreciate it. We're going to have, of course, a port talk on Cartagena in Colombia. But today, I'm an anthropologist, and so I wanted to give you a lecture today that gives you a little bit of a broader perspective on Colombia and especially the indigenous populations in Colombia. And it would be completely irresponsible of me for an anthropologist to not talk to you about human origins and about how the area was actually was populated by human beings. It's good to go back a little bit to your elementary anthropology course to remind you about these things. So the native populations of Colombia is an extensive group of people. There are almost 2 million of them. And although we think about Colombia as being largely Hispanic and with Spanish culture, with great Spanish authors, and modern civilization that's been influenced by Spanish heritage, the indigenous population is equally rich and equally important for our understanding of the country and of the area. So there are ancient roots that span many, many ecosystems. I think that a lot of us are not especially aware of how incredibly diverse the geography and the ecology of a place like Colombia is. It spans from the most mountainous areas, in fact, the most mountainous mountain range in all of South America, to the Amazon basin, which comes close to being at sea level at some certain points. And the populations in these places have adapted over a very, very large period of time. So there's a lot of cultural continuity in this area that took place long before the Spanish conquistadors actually had occupied the area and colonized Colombia and the northern part of South America. These indigenous traditions are living today. They are very powerful, and they have also influenced us. And this is one of the things that I'm going to be talking to you about, because the indigenous traditions of Colombia involve a huge amount of the use of plant material and a pharmacopoeia that has been adopted into Western medicine over a long period of time. And it is really a fascinating subject to try to deal with. So if we take a look at human occupation throughout the entire world, you can see this map of humans and when humans first arrived. For your elementary anthropology lesson, humans originated here in East Africa. The oldest humans on the planet actually are living in South Africa. They're the Khoisan people. They date to about 120,000 years ago, although modern humans really emerged, we now think, about 300,000 years ago. The next oldest people on the planet are actually the Australian Aborigines, who occupied Australia about 60,000 years ago. They intermingled with Neanderthal populations, Denisovian populations, and others. And what we're going to be talking about here is a relatively recent population of North America, about 15,000 years ago over the Bering Land Bridge. I'll get to that in just a minute. For those of you who've been on a Holland America cruise, you should know that the very last part of the planet to be occupied is actually the South Pacific. And Hawaii, New Zealand, and Rapa Nui, or Easter Island, were only actually populated about 1,000 years ago. And that was the end of the human occupation of the planet. We should be very aware that humans are absolutely the most adaptive animal species in the world. We live in every climate and in every place, and we have adopted biologically and culturally to so many different kinds of spaces. And we see a microcosm of all of this in Colombia, which is such a fascinating story. So the migration routes I've just shown you here, and we want to know what evidence informs our theories. In anthropology, we are a four-field discipline, carried out in the United States. Our four fields are biological anthropology, including genetics, and the great discovery of DNA and DNA analysis, which helps us so much in talking about the tracing of human origins. Archaeology, where we are able to look at human remains from various places and understand how human history took place before the beginning of writing, and actually even after the initiation of writing. Linguistics, and linguistics goes hand in glove with archaeology and biological anthropology. These things reinforce each other. So we can trace the history of languages back to their origins, and we can show how migration patterns among human beings resulted in a diversity of languages. And finally, cultural anthropology, and we find that cultural traditions persist over many centuries, even when they are not written. So all of this kind of evidence is evidence that we use in order to try to piece together the history of human beings and their migrations. So the principal theory for the population of both North and South America is the Bering Land Bridge theory, and we see that during the last ice age, Siberia and Alaska were connected by a sheet of ice, and it provided for the possibility for people to migrate from Siberia to North America. And the guess that we have, the theory that we have, is that hunter-gatherers essentially followed the wildlife from Siberia into North America and eventually made their way down all the way to the tip of South America. And this has been the long-standing theory of how these populations arrived, including the populations here in Colombia. So the oldest remains that we find for human beings up to now, or for a very long time, are called the Clovis people because it was because of a site that we found in Clovis, New Mexico, that is that's 13,000 years old. And people have been chipping away at this, and I'll just tell you the truth about archaeology is that anytime someone digs up something new, the theory changes because it's new information. And one of the places that has puzzled people for a very long time is this place down here in Chile called Monteverde. And it was originally claimed that Monteverde was 30,000 years old. Now, it immediately made a lot of news. People found it very controversial. And it has been redated to about 15,000 years ago. But what it shows is that human populations may have made their way all the way down to the tip of Chile at an earlier time than we had originally thought. But the time period, sort of 13 to 15,000 years ago, seems to be fairly accurate for the occupation of the Americas. And it was, in historical terms, a very, very rapid kind of occupation. But now we have another migration theory. And this is that there may have been early maritime travel. And you see the red line here with the sort of land travel theory of the occupation of the Americas. And this green line is the maritime theory. And this would account for Monteverde, because if you do have navigation over water, it really is possible to move more quickly than movement over land. And one of the other places that we've found that has a very early archaeological remains are actually the Channel Islands in California. And when you find early archaeological remains in the Channel Islands, then you know that somehow some people were traveling over water and managed to establish settlements there. So this theory is also part of our toolkit of explanation for human migration. And as you can see, the maritime navigation theory also touches on Colombia. So this becomes part of our set of explanations, and it explains these early archaeological sites. But now let's go to Colombia. We find the early sites on the Sabana de Bogotá. And Bogotá is, of course, the capital of Colombia and one of the earliest civilizations. And we can go actually way back beyond the earliest recorded civilizations to find stone tools and habitation remains. Now, one of the most amazing things about humans is that our stone toolkit is practically universal throughout the world. We find the same kinds of stone tools just about everywhere on the planet. And so we can assume that the stone tools were part of the cultural toolkit for the people who migrated to this area. So these are spear points and arrowheads and so forth are found throughout North America and also other parts of the world. So we have also now, because of DNA analysis, been able to document the fact that the populations of North America actually have genetic links to the populations of Siberia and Eastern Asia. And so we're pretty sure that we're right about the nature of human origins and about how they eventually made their way into the Americas. So this genetic reinforcement is very important. Now, when people arrived on the Sabana de Bogotá, they began to undergo a transition which we found in other parts of the world as well. This is the so-called Neolithic transition, or the Neolithic revolution. This is when human beings, who were hunters and gatherers for the most part, found that some genius found that if you took the seeds that you were eating and you kept them in in storage, that you could replant them and you could control your food supply. And that is an amazing discovery. And it seems to have occurred simultaneously or nearly simultaneously in many parts of the world about 10,000 years before the Common Era. And in the Middle East, this cultivation started with the grains that we normally think of for bread: wheat, barley, oats, things of that sort, all taking place in the highlands above Mesopotamia. And in East Asia, rice cultivation, and in parts of Africa, millet cultivation and sorghum. But in the Andes and in South America and parts of North America, this was the domestication of very specific staple crops. And these consisted of maize, or corn, which became an amazing cultural and dietary cornerstone for your tortillas and tacos and things of that sort. Potatoes, which are native to the Andean region and which were imported to Europe once the age of exploration took place. And also cassava or yucca, as well as beans. And the geniuses who developed agriculture also found that some of these crops were compatible with each other. That is, when they grew together, they provided the nutrients that were necessary in order to support each other. So there's a symbiotic relationship, for instance, between corn and beans and squash that was an agricultural complex. Now, what happens when you are able to control your food crops or able to control animal husbandry and the breeding of animals is that you get a lot of extra time in your life. You plant intensively in the springtime or in one season. You harvest intensively in another season, and the other times, the other parts of the year are left for you to do other things. And those other things had to do with the development of complex technologies, with baskets, with pottery, and in many parts of the world, unfortunately, not so much in the Americas, the development of metal, bronze and iron. However, it was not entirely the metal and metal work did not entirely escape people in the Americas because they had gold. And gold is a pretty easy thing to work with because it doesn't require smelting. You really can pretty much do, it's a soft metal, can be easily melted, but it doesn't need to be refined in the way that iron does or in the way that copper or bronze does. So the result was that empires could be built as a result of the accumulation of wealth, accumulation of grains and food, and accumulation of technology, and eventually the development of centers for distribution for individuals. And this took place in Colombia and in the Mayan Empire, in the Aztec Empire, and in the Inca Empire in Latin America. Later on, I'm going to be giving a lecture about those other empires, but there is an important empire in Colombia that has received not very much attention, but was equally developed and equally interesting for our understanding of human civilization. So, if we take a look at the indigenous people of Colombia today, there are over a million, there are almost 2 million indigenous citizens in 151 different ethnic groups. There are 68 different languages that are spoken in the indigenous communities in Colombia, and dozens of distinct people. Now, the area that I'm going to be focusing on today, there are three areas. One is the Sierra Madre area here, which is not part of the Andean range, but is in fact the highest mountain range in Latin America, and it's very close to the coastline. So it's really interesting. We'll be able to see from Cartagena, we may be able to see these mountains from where we are actually docking. Then there is the Pacific region here, the area around Bogota here in the middle, also the highland region that's part of the Andean region, and then finally this area down here, the Amazonian region. And these are all as different as could possibly be imagined. So this multiplicity of indigenous population is really amazing. So the Muisca legacy, this is the area around Bogota, and it is one of the great empires of this time. And so the Muisca Confederation flourished many thousands of years before the Spanish ever arrived. But when the Spanish arrived, they found that they had gold, and that was so exciting. This was the origin of the El Dorado legend for the Spanish. The truth is actually more interesting. The chief of the Muisca Empire would be, as part of a ritual process, would be covered in gold dust, and he would be set on a raft and would offer treasures in the great lake Guatavita. This was not a city of gold, but it was a profound ritual offering that was carried out. And when the Spanish first witnessed this person covered in gold dust, they assumed that that there was some vast treasure that was being stored. It turns out there was gold, of course, but the El Dorado remained a tremendous myth, and it was actually carried out into North America as well. I mean, they tried to find gold in Kansas, for heaven's sakes. So there was a kind of a fever for gold that maybe even continues down to the present day. Now, the Muisca population spoke a language that is not related to Mayan, not related to Aztec, not related to the Inca languages, to Quechua, and it has gone dormant. But thanks to the fact that we had Spanish missionaries who had recorded it, we were able to put together a grammar, and it's undergoing a revival today. So the next people, the Sierra Nevada people in the north, are the Arhuaco, the Kogi, the Wiwa, and the Cancoamo, and other tribes. But these are people who also inspire a sacred landscape worldview that I'm going to talk about in just a minute. They are important. They're an important spiritual source for indigenous people throughout Colombia. And their idea of spiritual guardianship is a very potent message for not only Colombian people, but also for maybe the rest of the world. Their philosophy, their idea, is that they are the elder brothers, and the younger brothers are us. They are the elder brothers who are in contact with nature, who have a direct relationship with the earth and with the processes of the earth. And the younger brothers are the people in the civilization who are causing the heart of the world to sicken. That is a direct quote from the Kogi. So they are somewhat austere, somewhat remote, but also deeply philosophical people with a deeply philosophical measure. The Amazonian people have great ethnic diversity, and they share a heritage with the Amazonian people of southern Venezuela, of Brazil, and also even western or eastern Ecuador. And these people have a deep knowledge of rainforest agriculture and culture. They're defendants of their own ecosystem, and they are some of the populations are so remote that they were not even discovered until the 1980s. So we are there's still an area that we are, as anthropologists, exploring, trying to understand, and also helping to try to bring into contact with the more modern world. And we have a lot to learn from them, actually. These are the Pacific Coast and the Plains people, the Emberá and the Wonan cultures, the Orinoquia nomadic traditions, and that have distinct artistic expressions as well. Now, there are important rights and challenges that are taking place within Colombia, because Colombia is also a highly urbanized society with modern cities, modern infrastructure, and the protection of indigenous rights has become a political controversy and is extremely important in the fabric of Colombian life today. The legal recognition of diversity is a very important political issue. Land and environmental threats that threaten to change the lives of indigenous people, and cultural preservation struggles become a really important part of the political fabric. This sign says the indigenous people of Inga present in the struggle for our rights. So these people, the Inga people, are in fact the Colombian population that has come up from Peru and is part of the heritage, the Inca heritage. So they are also another group. Now, to understand the resistance, you have to understand that it's not just political resistance. This is a resistance that has deep roots in environmental protection. And a key concept here is the concept of buen viva, which is not just living better, buen viva, better living, but living well. And in this view, illness, or human illness, is often a symptom of a broken relationship with the land, with the spirits, and with the community. And healing, therefore, is about restoring balance between humans and nature. And this is where I'm going to move in this talk, because one of the ways that you obtain balance with nature is through communion with plants and with plant material. So the natural vegetation and the use of plant material as a communicative device to be in sync with nature becomes one of the most important aspects of indigenous culture throughout this area. So nature and culture are interconnected. Harmony is emphasized over domination, and healing restores balance. So healing is a continual process, a continual kind of communion with nature, and is very important. Now, for this, the sacred role of plants becomes one of the most important aspects of how you do this. And using plants as a sacred device to try to develop this harmony with nature, becomes one of the hallmarks of ritual life of these indigenous peoples throughout the country. So the plants are divided into three categories: food, medicine, and ritual usage. So food is obvious, you eat your broccoli. But medicine, then using plant material as for medicinal purposes. And some of you probably take herbal supplements. I take a few, and those are important for healing. But also ritual use, and for the ritual use, these herbal materials provide for balance with the spiritual world. And that is how then these plants are used. So knowledge of how to do this, how to use plants for medicine, how to use plants for ritual purposes, for spirituality, are held in knowledge by specialists. Now, we're going to talk about a controversial topic, and that is the coca leaf. The coca leaf is found throughout the Andean area, and it is widely misunderstood by Western society because of the development of cocaine. I'll have a few remarks about cocaine in just a minute. But it is a sacred Andean plant, and it has ritual and social importance. But it also is medicinal. It's misunderstood globally. What the coca leaf does is it suppresses appetite. It provides for adaptation to high altitude, and that is really one of the most important aspects of what it does. And it provides energy. So a person who is regularly chewing coca leaf in the Andes can work for a long period of time without feeling hunger, and is also not susceptible, or not as susceptible, to the lack of oxygen at high levels. And that's why coca has prevailed as an important cultivan in the Andean area, and also throughout Colombia, all the way down to, by the way, to Peru, and even into the Andean mountains in Chile. So we find it here, and the alkaloid that is predominant for coca was isolated in Germany in 1858 by a German chemist who promptly died. He didn't die from cocaine usage. He promptly died. But it was a revolution, because what was discovered was that, among other things, cocaine had the property of serving as a local anesthetic, and it was immediately used especially for dental surgery and for throat surgery, because it was so potent as a local anesthetic. But it was soon discovered that cocaine also had cognitive properties, let's say, and it was embraced by no less a person than Sigmund Freud, who thought that it was probably a good thing to be using in order to try to calm people's nerves, and to develop euphoria and get rid of depression. And it certainly does that, but quite unfortunately, cocaine produces physical dependence and addiction. And that was not discovered for nearly 60 years after cocaine was developed. Some of you may know that when cocaine was developed and people found it to be a pleasant thing to use, it was first produced in an infusion of wine. So cocaine-laced wine was very popular in France, and it was produced in the United States in Atlanta. But in 18, I believe it's 1868, the city of Atlanta went on a prohibition kick, and they banned alcohol, and so the manufacturer of cocaine-laced wine immediately changed his formula and had cocaine-laced soda water with flavorings, and voila, Coca-Cola. Cocaine was removed from Coca-Cola in 1903 after it was discovered that it was addictive, and then we didn't have nearly as much fun. So, but coca and the consumption of coca remains a very important ritual aspect of life in the Andean traditions and in Colombia today. And it is unfortunate that it has become the basis for a certain amount of drug trafficking. But do remember that cocaine did not have its origin in Colombia. It had its origin in Germany. So it is it's Western refinement of this plant that has created this situation. Now, one of the other plants that you may not know as much about is ayahuasca, or yagué. This is a powerful ritual medicine, and it creates a feeling of oneness with the universe and a suspension of time. So it is used very widely in ritual processes as a way of communing with nature and communing with the spirit world and communing with Earth. It's not a recreational drug in its use in Colombia. It is a technology of consciousness, which is used in natural settings in order to try to carry out spiritual healing. Now, ayahuasca is now being developed as a drug in treatment for PTSD and other mental problems, other cognitive and neurological problems here in the United States. It's still in experimental stages, but some of you may know about the use of psilocybin for PTSD. But ayahuasca is also being developed as an even safer and more easily controlled form of treatment. And we'll be seeing in years to come how that actually plays out. But this is part of the process of using native plant traditions as a kind of pharmacopoeia for Western treatment of disease. And we've learned quite a lot from the peoples of all over the world, actually, for their native traditions. Finally, we have yopo, or bilka. And this is a seed that is roasted and turned into a powder, which is then taken as snuff. Usually there's a long tube, and essentially you put the tube in your nose, and then a ritual practitioner blows the snuff into your nostrils. It has a pretty immediate effect. Sometimes it causes brief unconsciousness, but it does send a person into a ritual state where they see, seemingly, I haven't tried it, but they seemingly see deities, shining objects. There's a great elongation of time, so something that takes just a few minutes can sometimes seem like hours, and it is a way of communing with the spiritual world. And this is not just in Colombia, but also in the Amazon basin, throughout the Amazon basin. It's also a process for divination and healing because people go seemingly into trance. And this has not been developed as a a pharmaceutical in the Western world. And, rather unpleasant to have, snuff blown up your nostrils through a tube. But but I don't have any doubts that there are some people around who have tried it, because it is a very potent cultivan. Oh, there are other plants that are much more benign than any of those that I've been talking about. Those are the more dramatic ones. But more common household remedies treat digestive ailments. There's also the ritual use of tobacco, chamomile, guayaba, a fruit which is a really good source of digestive health, and other kinds of household remedies. Now I want to introduce you to one of my colleagues. This is Wade Davis. Wade Davis is an explorer in residence at the National Geographic Society. And he has devoted his life to ethnobotany, which is the study of the traditional use of plant material throughout the world. But his specialization has been in Colombia and in the Amazon basin. He's a documenter of this indigenous knowledge, and he is also a global advocate for understanding this indigenous knowledge. He did work in the Sierra Madre and also in the Amazon basin, and here he is looking and investigating the ayahuasca preparation methods in Colombia. He has tremendous knowledge of plant usages and the cultural interpretation and cultural contextualization, so that we don't misunderstand how these plants are used and why they're used for the purposes they are. His great book, One River, actually is a tribute to his mentor, the ethnobotanist Richard Schultes, who was one of the pioneers in this area in Colombia and in the Amazon basin from the 1940s through the 1970s. Harvard-trained ethnobotanist, anthropologist, and biologist, who spent his entire life documenting Amazonian plants and their usages. So the continuity of knowledge through Richard Schultes and Wade Davis has been a wonderful contribution to the world. And I'll suggest a couple of books that they have written. Now, we come down to, in the Sierra Madre, we come down to the Kogi again and the Elder Brothers' warning. Quite aside from plant usage, we have a general ecological message that's very important. The Kogi ethnological message is that modern society has sent the world into imbalance. And this is not just something that took place in the last 10 years. The Kogi have been saying this for practically the time of the Spanish conquest of Latin America. That imbalance is dangerous for the entire planet, and that we need to understand our intrinsic relationship with the earth. So Wade Davis has lectured on this. Here's one of his TED Talks, and he validates indigenous science and points out in his TED Talk, the world in which you were born is just one mode of reality. We have to understand many modes of reality, not just one. And encouraging cultural respect becomes one of his most important messages. The idea of multiple worldviews, the view of the world from a civilizational perspective and from an indigenous perspective, and being able to simultaneously understand these two becomes one of the more important messages that can be given out. So the biodiversity and conservation is one important message that we get from looking at the indigenous populations of Colombia and other nations. Medical research potential is especially important and especially large because the native wisdom over many, many centuries has led to wonderful scientific discoveries and wonderful healing properties for the use of traditional plants. And also cultural survival. We want to make sure that these cultures are not subsumed under civilizational pressures. So this becomes a continuous human story. Human beings have adapted over millennia to different environmental conditions, and our ability to do that is one of our great powers as human beings. The fact that we can occupy any place on the planet and somehow adapt culturally, take account of the resources that are available to us, and find things that actually enhance our lives, that heal us, that make our lives and the lives of our families and children and society better, is really our superpower as human beings. It's what's allowed us to survive and to continue to prevail under tremendously difficult conditions. So innovation and resilience is one of the great messages that we get from these traditional populations, and cultural endurance. There are, of course, in Colombia and elsewhere, threats to communities. There's deforestation, which is taking place throughout the Amazon basin and throughout Colombia, violence and displacement through political unrest and upheaval and controversies that take place, and also, well, language loss, which is a shame, because in our language we preserve the knowledge of previous generations. When you lose a language, you lose a whole cultural fabric that helps preserve the knowledge and the wisdom. So what are the paths forward? We need to strengthen the autonomy of traditional populations, obviously support education, support preservation, and continue to conduct ethical research, because these provide sustainability lessons for us, philosophical insights that we might not have otherwise considered, and the preservation of human rights. And finally, we have to understand our deep historical roots. The human story is not just a decade or even a generation old. It goes back literally hundreds of thousands of years, and putting together the pattern of human adaptation over this long period of time is especially important. These living indigenous cultures are treasures, and they need to be preserved and they need to be respected. And our however greater understanding we can find for these cultures is going to enrich not only our lives, but enrich the lives of all of humanity. And it, of course, has global relevance. So I thank you, and whoops, I always do this. I don't get to. My thing clicks off before I get a chance to show you the books. But let me see if I can come back. Well, wait just a minute. Well, I don't want to fetishize this. This is, but the last slide. The very last. Well, this may not be worth waiting for, but so this is a further reading that Wade Davis's One River, and also the Wayfinders talking about the indigenous people of the Sierra Madre, and many others. But I'll also urge you all to learn the term ethnobotany, which you may not have heard before, but realize that it is a tremendously interesting and wonderful subject for study, and something that we have benefited from as human beings for a very, very long time, and will continue to do so. So I thank you one more time for your attention. I really appreciate you coming today. I will see you again. I will see you again after we get through the Panama Canal. My first lecture after that will be on Costa Rica, and we'll be talking about gold again, and the civilizations of Costa Rica. So thank you again.